In today's video, I'm going to give you one of my favorite persuasion tactics that you can use ethically. And if you don't understand this or don't know this yet, you're probably leaving a ton of money on the table for your business. Because what we're going to cover today is something called micro commitments and the science behind it. And this is the exact persuasion method that gets used by really good salesmen that you bump into, like car salesmen. They get you to pay more than you planned. And then I'm going to show you how you can use this ethically, flip the script a little bit to double your own conversions in whatever you're doing, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales. It's called the lowball technique. And it's the specific reason why you might agree to buy something, let's say a car. You buy a car for 20 grand and then you walk out actually paying a lot more than that 20 grand and you think you've got a really great deal still, right? It's a fundamental psychological principle about how the human brain processes consistency. And that is a bit of a mouthful, but I'm going to break that down for you now. So let's start how this works in real life, right? Pretend for a minute that you and I are really good friends. We know each other, you know, we've known each other for years, and I want you to really pretend that me and you are really good friends. And I turn around and I ask you one day, I say, hey friend, can you give me a lift to the airport tomorrow? And you, in return, because it's such a simple favor and you're a good friend, you think to yourself, have I actually got anything on tomorrow? Yeah, sure, I'll give you a lift to the airport tomorrow, you say back to me. Now, I've just obtained your commitment, right? I then hit you with the details, the sneaky details. I say, awesome, thanks. By the way, my flight is actually at 5 a.m. tomorrow. Now, internally, if this scenario would have happened, you would be screaming inside, right? You'd be like, I can't believe this guy has just asked me to do this. If only he would have led first with that my flight is at 5 a.m. But I didn't lead first with my flight is at 5 a.m. I led with, can you give me a lift to the airport? But if I'd have led first with my flight is at 5 a.m., you'd have actually said no, right? Because it's more unreasonable, the request. Like, there's two different things. I'm asking you to go out your way to take me to the airport, and now I'm asking you to get out really early as well. It's two things I'm asking from you. But because you've already said yes to me now, you've established yourself as this helpful friend. You're statistically, and this behavioral science research that backs this, you're statistically now much more likely to follow through, even though the cost of the favor that you're doing for me has just went up massively. You're more likely to now say, yeah, all right, I'll give you the lift at 5 a.m. This is the lowball technique. You secure an agreement on a lower cost first, giving the lift, and then you reveal the hidden costs afterwards, which is waking up really early after the commitment is made. Right. It's obviously quite an unethical example, but this is based on real research in psychology from 1978. Why does this happen, right? It comes down to, as I kind of talked about before, something called the commitment and consistency principle, which is a term created by a really famous behavioral scientist called Robert Cialdini. Now, once we make decisions, our brains encounter something called cognitive dissonance if we try and change our minds. So to avoid feeling flaky in this scenario or inconsistent, we end up doubling down. We rationalize the new cost, protecting our self-image, right? So how does this apply to your landing pages, how you try to DM people, how you try to generate business, how does it apply to your sales, your ads, your funnels, etc.? You see all of this in dark persuasion patterns all the time, like airlines adding fees at the very last second, right? You've booked everything on your airline and then suddenly it's this much for your baggage, and then suddenly it's a little bit more for, you know, the seats which you need to book as well, and then suddenly you need to, they've not quite included these other things, but you've already booked this flight now, and then suddenly it ends up way more than the initial cost that you paid for it. So airlines do this all the time. I use them as a really good example because everyone friggin' hates booking flights, and there's a reason for that, because this technique, when it's used in a bit of an unethical way, it works short term, but everyone ends up resenting you, right? It kills your brand loyalty. And here's how you can use the lowball technique to ethically optimize your own conversions, right? So, step number one, don't ask for marriage on the first date. If you're selling something which is $1,000, right, instead of asking for the $1,000 purchase immediately, ask for a small commitment that aligns with their identity. Rather than sending out an email to a client saying, or a potential client saying, buy my blah 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 for $1,000. Instead, offer them to create an account. Ask them whether they want to design their custom plan with you on your website. See if they qualify, right? And then after that, you could start increasing the cost. So once they've started the process, once they've typed the name or they've built the profile, they are then mentally committed a little bit more than what they were a while ago. This is really ethical, right? Because as humans, we don't like to do really hard things up front. We actually like to take small steps because it helps with our mental processing, right? So it's actually aligned with how the human brain works. And when we start to introduce the friction required to close the deal, the lengthy form fields, you've got to enter your credit card, the booking fee, because they've already completed a bunch of steps up to this moment, they are rationalizing then, well, I've already spent 5 minutes building this plan. I might as well finish it. I might as well spend a bit more time because I really can't be bothered going around and looking for any alternatives at this point, alternatives to this product, alternatives to service that you're trying to sell them. Okay, so let's talk about the ethical line here, because you kind of get a bit of an idea of how it works. It's a very fine line, the ethical line here is. Sleazy lowballing is lying about the price and then changing it later on. That's a bait and switch tactic, don't do that. When I look online and I see all these gurus who are, doing all these various different, I suppose some of them are get-rich-quick courses, some of them are business courses and things like this. You've seen the type. They go over health, wealth, happiness, all these different courses online. So many times they will bait and switch. They will say, hey, this is free to do if you can just speak with one of our advisors, and then on the advisor call, it's 10 grand to actually make the commitment, right? It's not free at all. Don't do that. Again, that's bait and switch tactics. That is the line there. But strategic lowballing is about the order of operations that you're doing. It's about securing a psychological yes before you actually introduce the big yes, right? So if you put a 20 form field, for instance, fill out this survey in front of cold traffic, they end up all bouncing, right? But if you do a 2 form field that then leads to an 18 form field, like an 18 form survey, after they've clicked get started, right? They're more likely to convert that way because they've taken the psychological steps. They've taken the actions themselves, which is then going to help them take the bigger actions. It's kind of like a ladder. In sales, there's something called the yes ladder, in which way the more times you hear a prospect say yes or agree to what you're saying, the more committed they're getting. There's kind of a little bit of science to that, but here's the proper stuff that I'm trying to teach you now. It's the low ball technique. And that is the low ball at work. When you do rather than the 20 form survey field, you do the 2 form survey field that leads into the 18 form survey field afterwards. So it's still the same length, it's just broken up, right? It's the order of operations. Now, the takeaway from this is that humans, me included, right? I am a human as well. And even though I know this stuff, it still works on me very effectively. Humans have this deep need to be consistent with their past actions. If you can get a customer to make a small, easy commitment to your brand first, whether it's signing up to your emails, your newsletters, and then opening them up and then, replying to an email, right, a newsletter that you're sending out, right? These are tiny little commitments. They are getting committed to your brand first, are paying more attention to it by default, right, just from doing these little actions. And so the commitment levels are going up a bit, but because they have done that, they are more likely, way more likely to accept the heavier lift of paying or signing up later, or whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do. If you look at your funnel today, are you asking for the 7 a.m. wake up call before they've even agreed to ride? Are you asking them to get married before you've even went out on the first date with them? If you are, just think about it logically. Well, think about it psychologically from what I've taught in this video. Flip the script a little bit and lead them up a few different commitment steps to the big ask that you're trying to do, essentially. So once you flip the script, you've used a psychological lowball technique. That gets the yes, that gets the commitment. And then you're in a much better place. Eventually though, this is a different type of problem this can lead to. You have to drop the hammer and you have to reveal the price. And if you present the price, the number, what they're expecting in the wrong way, all of that commitment you've just built can actually vanish in a second. So this is a pitfall that you can fall into. And there is a specific way to present your price used by everyone from Apple to Microsoft to used car dealerships that makes a $1,000 purchase feel like a $5 purchase, right? It makes things feel cheaper. There's a way of psychologically doing that, and it's called the anchoring effect. Now, if you want to see how that effect works, then I will show you in this next video here. And click over here, I'll see you there. Take care.